Final Fantasy is Magic the Gathering's best-selling set. Plus, the Space Wolf fans are getting spoiled with even more characters and brand new models. All this and more in this month's Hobby News. I'm Angela, you're watching Hobby Night. Now let's begin. To nobody's surprise, the Final Fantasy and Magic the Gathering collab is Magic the Gathering's top selling set. Now, I thought that this was definitely going to be in their top selling sets because I understand and know the Final Fantasy community. They are rabid. They love these characters. They are collectors and they are extremely hardcore. So they will literally buy anything that has their waifu or otherwise on it. So I'm really not surprised to see that Magic the Gathering's collab with Final Fantasy is just outselling anything else they've ever done. Because of that, we are seeing astronomical prices on some of these sets. Specifically, I want to call out the price of the collector's booster box, which is over $600, which is just absolutely wild to me. Honestly, it's too much. I did buy one. I am part of the problem. I am sorry, but I love Final Fantasy and I really like the characters that we're seeing in the set. So I did have to buy one, but there's also the commanders have gone crazy. Yshtadl, she's over $500 herself just for the collector version of her commander set, which I understand she is people's top waifu sometimes and they will want her in all of her glory, but the prices are insane. And you might be thinking to yourself, Angela, of course they're insane. We have all these tariffs happening now. And yes, while these are getting hit a little bit with tariffs, these products are actually not getting hit with the China tariffs, which are upping some of Wizards of the Coast products in price quite significantly, but Magic specifically is not being hit by the China tariffs, which is really good because they're already astronomically high. If they had the tariffs on top of it, the China tariffs on top of it, I can't imagine what these box sets would be costing. I honestly think they would end up being wildly outside of anybody's price range, except for just the most wealthy people who are into collecting these items. But thankfully they're not. Now, there are some products from Wizards of the Coast that are unfortunately being hit by the China tariffs. So if you are a D&D fan, you can expect to see some probably much larger and higher prices on your D&D books because those are unfortunately printed in China and therefore will be hit with those higher tariffs. Thankfully, Magic is not printed in China, so they're not getting hit with those precise tariffs. They are still getting hit with some, but it's not as bad as what we're going to be seeing with D&D products going forward, especially the printed book products. So I'm sorry for you if you're a D&D fan and you're really into 5.0 or whatever they ended up deciding to call it. I can't remember now at this point because I've sort of stepped away from D&D. I just don't like the direction that they're going. But at least there are some other games that are being safe, but not all of them. We'll talk about some other companies that are looking at some Trump tariffs that are hurting them as well in a little bit. But we have a couple of Warhammer topics to talk about first, so let's do that. Hey guys, I'm just jumping into the video to remind you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because I know most of you aren't. If you're into the spicier side of the content, then you should join my VIP page. New members get 50% off their first month subscription, and I really hope to see you there. Now, let's go ahead and get back to the video. If you are a Space Wolf fan, then oh my, you are eating well right now because Games Workshop is being incredibly generous to you, giving you a smorgasbord of delightful new miniatures to add to your army, including a new chapter master, Logan Grimnar, and all of his glory. And I just want to say outright that I think this model is absolutely stunning. The texture, all the detail, he looks great. The wolves look great. However, I do have one possibly controversial complaint, and that is that when I look at this model, what I see is a hermit who has come out of his cave with his two pet wolves that I've accidentally stumbled across and I now need to run for my life. However, his old model, which is this delightful model of him in a sled being led by those two wolves, where he looks like he is charging ferociously into battle, leading the space wolves, just diving headlong into just some sort of amazing fight against chaos, heresy, the enemies of humanity. All of that energy from this sled model, I feel like has been lost in this new model. Now, don't get me wrong. I do know that this particular model, the one in the sled, is potentially made of fine cast, which is just the worst material to work with. So don't get me wrong. I understand that it wasn't the best to build. And I know it was a bit fiddly to play with on the tabletop. I get that as well. But the energy, the momentum, I do kind of miss it. He feels a little bit more heroic and regal and just powerful. Whereas here he still looks powerful and menacing, but I'm missing a little bit of that heroic nature. He feels a little bit more, as I said, hermit-like. And that might fit, I suppose, but I do just miss the energy from this particular kit. I might be alone in that. You guys let me know down in the comments, especially you Space Wolf fans. Please tell me. Now, he isn't the only new model you're getting though. You're getting actually a couple of new named characters, including his right hand, Jack Rockfist, who looks stunning. And can I just say that the faux hammer, I love this pose where he is throwing the hammer. Like, that is so cool. I know it's very reminiscent of Thor and such, but I mean, they're Space Wolves, they're Vikings. It totally fits, and he looks stunning doing it. So very, very happy with that. But I think my favorite of the new models, although again, a little bit of a more stoic, static pose, is of course Najal Stormcaller, our Rune Priest. He looks stunning. I love the beard. I love his face. But I especially love the cyber bird. Like, it just looks so cool. And actually, I just want to call out the staff that he's holding. Really, really badass. I love the purple and teal on the runes. I just think that's a lovely touch. It feels a little Zechian, so it has me mildly concerned, but I'm not going to question it because I think it's beautiful. But I really, really think these models are very, very cool. But again, they're a little static. They're a little less energetic than I would have thought for some of the hero characters for the Space Wolves. But again, maybe that's just me. Maybe people are wanting these like slightly more statuesque heroic poses from these boys. This is not all we got though. We also got Wolfguard, which are our in Terminator armor, and I love Terminator armor. I mean, who doesn't love Terminator armor? I literally have not met anybody who plays Warhammer 40k who doesn't go, Terminators? Yes, I love them, and hearts form in their eyes. And frankly, the Space Wolf Terminators, they look great. Again, a huge, huge variety of faces. I commented on this previously. I really love the diversity of what GW is doing, especially with the Space Wolf line when it comes to faces, beards, etc. It looks really good. And they're Terminators, so they look extra good because they're just big, chonky boys, and they still have tons of fur, tons of texture. And I really think GW is killing it with these new Space Wolves. I probably will have to pick up some because I really, really enjoyed painting Blackmane, and I really want to paint some of these other newer models as well because I love the texture on them. I'm a texture eater. I'm also apparently a texture painter. That seems to be pretty obvious if you've ever watched any of my content, but really the Space Wolves have significantly proved that to myself, and I can't wait to paint them. If you are a Space Marine fan, you are familiar with what is currently on screen. The majestic drop pod. It is how Space Marines get into battle, and we have had the same drop pod model for too long, and Games Workshop has finally updated it. But they have done so in a way that I think some people are both very happy with, but other people are a little like, oh, I'm gonna miss that. So the main thing that has changed when it comes to the drop pod, and you can't really tell it from this main image here, is that these doors are no longer hinged. When you look top down and you see all that rubble attached to it, because when you look at the old drop pod, there was no rubble, and these doors could close and go up, and it was really cool. It was very narrative, which is one of the reasons that people really, really liked it. And now that hingeability and everything is gone. Now this is great, especially if you are a competitive player, because one of the issues with the drop pod and why Games Workshop did this, and they even say so in this article, is because there was a lot of back and forth between players on what the actual zone was around it for play and everything. And that caused some arguments, caused some problems, and I'm sure it disrupted tournaments to a fair amount. And this is hopefully going to avoid that because now it's all defined, there are specific rules for it, and those doors aren't hinged, so now there is no question of what is in play and what is not, where is the drop pod, where is its foot space, etc. And that is great, again, for competitive and tournament play. But on the narrative level, I miss being able to have the thing come in onto the ground. I have it closed, and then I just like let the hinges fall open and they collapse. And then I could like have my little models go down the ramps. And it was really cool and fun and narrative. And I was playing with toy soldiers, and it makes me sad that part of that element of playing with toy soldiers is gone. But at the same time, honestly, this change is probably for the best, because it is going to hopefully make the tournament scene run a lot smoother, which I know is a really big focus, it seems, for GW, even though I don't. You tell me in the comments. I'm not a tournament player, but I just don't know if it feels the same as it did even like back in 8th edition as it does now. And I don't know if it has the same vibe, the same like feeling that people used to get from it. You tell me down in the comments. Are you a competitive player, or do you just play casually or narratively? And does this change even affect you at all? Next, I want to talk about a Kickstarter TCG game that is doing something that I have never seen any other TCG game do. And I honestly don't know how I feel about it in regards to how successful I ultimately think it will be, but I find it to be a fascinating concept. So let me explain it to you. Altered, a TCG that started on Kickstarter, is doing something unique. They are allowing players via QR codes on the cards as they open from normal packs. So you can still buy this game as you would normally, just like you would do Magic or Pokemon. Buy the packs, boosters, they're blind, you open them up, you get the cards. Very exciting, gets you that same adrenaline feeling of opening packs as you would with Magic and Pokemon, right? But the difference is all the cards have a QR code on them. And if you scan that QR code and you put it into their app, then you have the collection saved digitally. And you can actually order those cards that you have the digital codes for on demand and actually get them printed. The way that they're doing this is interesting and a little bit restrictive when you start really digging into it, but I want to give you the very basics because I find this fascinating and I want to keep my eye on it because I want to see where it ends up, if this is successful, and how the TCG landscape actually like deals with it and reacts to it, because I find the idea fascinating. Once you've scanned the QR code and you have it on their app, you can buy packs, which are of printed cards that you already own. And you can put the same card into a pack, which has to have a total of 20 cards in it before you can actually order it, and they'll send it to you as you want. So like if you want 20 of this one card because you like really like it, you're using it all in all your decks or something like that, in theory, you could do that. You even can get holo versions of these cards as well as printed on-demand promo cards. Now, those are more restricted. The promo cards, for example, you can only order once per year. So it's not like you can sit there and just like print money for a secondary market or something like that, which is pretty good. I'm glad that there are some of these restrictions on there, because as soon as I heard about this, that was immediately my thought process. Is I'm like, is this to destroy a secondary market or to like artificially flood a secondary market? Or is this like, what's going on here? And I think it's to help limit a secondary market because of the way that they're being a little restrictive. But if it's like a common card and you just want it in a normal printing as is, you can just get like 20 of them, which I find to be really cool, especially since in the Magic community, especially, players who are veterans in the game often tell new players buy singles. Don't go chasing pack opening and doing that kind of thing, because that gets absurdly expensive and it's ridiculous. And, you know, be mindful and actually just buy singles, because it tends to be a lot cheaper and you can build really great decks by just buying the singles off of things like TCG Player, etc., right? Hashtag not sponsored. But I do find it interesting that like a company is taking that idea of the buying singles and doing it like, yeah, do buy singles, buy them directly from us, and we will send them to you in a pack that you then, I think, like from my understanding, and I don't know this for certain, so don't quote me on this, but I kind of get the impression they are sealing them and you're getting to physically open them again. And I mean, you're going to get the cards that you know you're going to get because you literally ordered them, but you're still getting that pack opening sensation, I hope. And that feels kind of nice, I guess. I would like that, I like this idea. So I'm gonna be keeping my eye on this. You guys let me know down in the comments if you've tried this, if you've heard of Altered, if you've bought into it, did you go into the Kickstarter, and are you excited about this print on demand service? Because it's certainly interesting and I wanna see where it ends up. If you are a fan of Cool Mini or not, don't expect to see any new game launches from them on Kickstarter or GameFound anytime soon, because the tariffs are hitting them hard. So hard that they might be in some serious trouble, and it's going to be interesting to see how they handle things going forward. And I actually feel very bad for them because I actually really like Cool Mini or Not. I like their games. I think they're good. I like the products that they produce, and I think the quality of the games that they produce is also very high. But because of Trump's tariffs, especially on China, they are looking at some really, really high prices, and they look like they're struggling a little bit. And it's a little scary because they have 11 outstanding game titles that are still in production and have not been fulfilled. And that's a lot of games. That is a lot of games that are now probably going to be delayed, potentially get more expensive for consumers, and that might ultimately end up killing them just for bad PR, because people like abandon it, they want refunds, and they just lose a bunch of money that way. So like, I'm a little concerned for them, and I think they're a little concerned for themselves. On top of that, Cool Mini or Not is also unfortunately doing layoffs, because all game companies, both on the digital side and the traditional side, are doing layoffs, and Cool Mini or Not is one of those companies. Now, this probably doesn't come into any surprise, because if they're going to be getting hit hard by the tariffs, they're probably going to be trying to get any money where they can and save it where they can. And one of the easy ways for companies to do that is to let go of their teams, especially if their teams are creative teams who are working on games, and they're not going to be doing that for the foreseeable future because they don't know what their business is going to look like because of all of these tariffs, which is just really, really unfortunate. And I hope all of this gets resolved and just fixed as soon as possible, because it's hitting so many different industries, but I hate that it is hitting the board game industry as much as it is. And I really like, I have been following Cool Mini or Not like since their origin, and this is so sad to see, and I hope that they survive it, but here's hoping. If you have not heard, Steamforged Games has a new game on GameFound, and it is for Democracy, for Super Earth, a Helldivers 2 board game. So if you have been playing Helldivers 2, been loving it, but going, man, I really want a tabletop version with miniatures of the Helldivers and the bugs, well, now you can get that. You can actively pledge for it now on GameFound, and it looks pretty cool. Now, I do have one mild concern as I watch this and see it being played, and that is part of what makes Helldivers such a thrilling gaming experience is the franticness, specifically of having to smash buttons to get these codes in as quickly as possible while you're being surrounded and overwhelmed by either bugs or bots. And I'm looking at this in this trailer, and we'll continue the trailer here in a moment, but I had to pause on this because this is the one thing where I look at it and go, I don't get where this is getting that frantic element from. You're putting cubes on this, which I don't think you're grabbing cubes and like having to do it in a timer sort of way. So I'm imagining you're doing this like over time via actions that you're doing, maybe movement that you're doing. I don't know how it exactly works, but I feel like it's slowing it down. I feel like the pacing for this game could potentially be weird. But you know what? They're really cool models, which would be really, really fun to paint. And I buy tons of board games just for the miniatures. So if I see this on the shelves later on down the line, I might end up picking Helldivers 2 up. But that is my one main concern with it, is I feel like the pacing of this board game as it looks here, especially, like I said, with completing your objectives, getting these cubes onto these like arrows representing you smashing in buttons to call things down for airdrops and airstrikes and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's all meant to be done very, very like energetically, very frantically, like you're panicking. Maybe it's just me, maybe I was just always panicking when it was happening, but I feel like that element's gonna be missing a little bit. So that's my one concern for this. Otherwise, I think it looks great. And if you wanna back it, you can currently find it on GameFound. All right, everybody, that has been it for this month in hobby news. I hope that you enjoyed. We'll be back next month with even more to talk about. Hopefully there'll be some new announcements. We'll have more miniatures to look at. Fingers crossed. But in the meantime, I hope you have an absolutely wonderful time. Thank you so much to both my patrons and my YouTube members for making it so content like this can continue to happen. Without your guys' support, we wouldn't be able to do this, so thank you very, very much. And I have been Angela. Have a wonderful hobby night, everybody.